July 2024. In the gray light of dawn, deep inside a stretch of contested farmland in eastern Ukraine, cameras captured a moment that stunned both analysts and soldiers alike. Dust rose over a column of armored vehicles cutting through the fog. Then, flashes of tracer fire, short, rhythmic, and unnervingly precise. For a few seconds, the battlefield seemed choreographed, until a sudden eruption broke the silence of morning. No one yet understood what had happened, only that something extraordinary was unfolding on the ground, a clash that would soon become a symbol of modern mechanized warfare. In the following analysis, we'll trace each phase of that confrontation, uncover the tactics behind it, and explain how one vehicle became the center of a storm shaking Europe's eastern front. The attack began just after sunrise in July 2024, as Ukrainian armored units rolled out from their hidden positions near the Donetsk front. Thick smoke blanketed the fields, and electronic jammers disrupted Russian drones circling above. From that haze, the M2A2 Bradley infantry fighting vehicle, built in the United States, emerged at the head of the formation. It was not just a transport, it was a machine built for speed, firepower, and protection. Every soldier in that convoy knew the Bradley would lead the way through one of the toughest lines in the east. The 25mm M242 Bushmaster cannon roared first. Each burst tore through Russian positions, crushing bunkers and silencing firing points. The sound echoed across the steppe, followed by the hiss of a TOW missile streaking into a fortified trench. A bright flash and plume of dust marked the hit. According to the Drive, Ukrainian gunners praised the Bradley's stability and accuracy unmatched by older Soviet vehicles, allowing them to fire effectively while moving. Moments later, another TOW missile struck a second target, collapsing a Russian bunker reinforced with logs. Behind the lead Bradley, a line of APCS advanced in tight formation. Their job was to carry infantry and supplies, releasing infrared flares to distract heat-seeking rockets. The sky flickered with bursts of orange light that cut through the morning mist, an eerie display of survival in motion. As Army recognition explained, Ukrainian commanders began using Bradleys as mobile fire bases, combining armor and infantry in precise, NATO-style assaults. Once the Bradley cleared the first defensive line, its rear hatch opened, and Ukrainian soldiers dashed out. They advanced behind the vehicle's armor, spreading across shell-cratered fields. Every movement was timed with the rhythm of the cannon. One platoon leader later called it a dance between man and machine. The terrain ahead was open, littered with ruins and half-buried trenches. Russian troops had fortified abandoned homes, turning each window into a firing slit. But the Bradley's thermal imaging sights gave the Ukrainians an edge. Gunners could spot heat signatures through smoke and walls, striking targets long before they fired back. Reports from Reuters confirmed that several Russian armored vehicles were destroyed in this phase of the advance, underscoring the Bradley's power in close combat. Inside the lead vehicle, discipline ruled every second. The driver scanned digital screens, the commander relayed range data, the gunner adjusted elevation without pause. Their coordination reflected months of NATO training, clear communication, fast target handoffs, and mechanical precision. Analysts from Jane's Defense Weekly noted in June 2024 that Ukraine's battlefield style had evolved from Soviet-era frontal assaults to Western-style combined operations. By mid-morning, the Ukrainian column had pushed several kilometers into contested ground. Drone footage later reviewed by defense experts showed the Bradleys forming a moving shield for infantry, who followed closely through debris and smoke. Every few minutes, another missile flashed from the turret, marking another breach in Russian defenses. It was the kind of synchronized attack that turned training into survival. For those watching from command screens, the operation looked flawless. For the soldiers inside, it was chaos balanced by instinct. Still, for a brief moment, the advance seemed unstoppable. The Bradley had proven itself not only as a machine of war, but as a symbol of Ukraine's shift toward Western combat standards, organized, aggressive, and resilient. Yet precision and momentum always come at a cost. On the other side of the field, fear began to spread through the Russian ranks, and what followed would turn that fear into full retreat. The breakthrough came fast. Around mid-morning on July 2024, after Ukrainian Bradleys and APCs broke through the first defensive line near Donetsk, the Russian positions began to crumble. Machine gun fire grew scattered, radio calls went unanswered, and what had been a strong defense just minutes earlier turned into confusion. Panic spread through the trenches as Ukrainian armor pushed deeper. Some Russian soldiers tried to regroup, but most saw only one option: run. Witnesses later told Reuters that several troops abandoned their armored vehicles, jumped onto motorcycles, and sped away across the open plain, hoping to outrun the advancing Ukrainians. Their escape, however, did not last long. High above the field, Ukrainian FPV and bomber drones were already hunting. Operators sitting miles away watched their screens, guiding explosives with calm precision. One drone locked onto a pair of riders. Another dove straight toward a trench where soldiers had taken cover. Within seconds, the field erupted in smoke and dust. Each explosion left black scars on the earth. Engines burned, tires spun, and the noise of small arms fire was replaced by the buzzing of drones. The Kyiv Independent described it as a chase between flesh and metal, a moment when human instinct met machine accuracy. The footage posted later by Ukrainian media showed motorcycles weaving between craters while drones hovered overhead, waiting for the right moment to strike. For the Russian troops, the battlefield had turned into a trap. With every movement tracked from above, hiding meant survival. But drones see what eyes cannot: heat, shadow, and vibration. Operators could even identify fleeing soldiers by their body heat against the cool morning ground. A single command, a flick of a joystick, and another grenade fell. Military analysts from The Drive explained that Ukraine's success came from the coordination between armored vehicles and drones. As the Bradleys suppressed ground targets, the drones finished what the cannons could not: chasing, locating, and striking isolated units. This new form of warfare blurred the line between manned and unmanned combat, creating what some experts call the predator zone, where soldiers no longer fear an enemy they can see, but the silence of the sky above them. By noon, the chase was over. The Russian unit that once held the stronghold had scattered, leaving motorcycles, weapons, and wounded behind. Ukrainian drones continued circling the area, checking for survivors and confirming kills. The calm that followed felt unnatural. No shouts, no orders, only smoke rising from burned machines. The cost of panic had been absolute. This episode showed how technology now decides the pace of battle. Once, infantry could retreat and regroup behind new lines. Now, with drones patrolling the skies, retreat often means destruction. Analysts at BBC defense correspondents wrote that small aerial drones change the nature of withdrawal, making it nearly impossible for forces to escape without heavy losses. For Ukraine, the message was clear: control the air and you control the ground. For Russia, it was a lesson in how fast fear can spread when soldiers realize the enemy no longer needs to chase them because the machines already can. But the panic on the ground was only the first wave. As the Ukrainians pressed forward, Moscow prepared to answer in the one language it knows best: a storm of rockets and fire. By early afternoon on July 2024, the battlefield had changed again. After losing several forward positions, Russian command responded the only way it knew how, with overwhelming firepower. Orders went out across radio networks, and within minutes, the silence broke. Multiple launch rocket systems, MLRS, roared to life, sending ripple salvos into the gray horizon. Each volley shook the tree line, scattering leaves and debris across the muddy roads. From the distance, it looked like a curtain of fire moving toward the Ukrainian advance. The Su-25 Frogfoot ground attack aircraft, Russia's longtime close air support jet, entered the fight next. Flying just a few meters above the ground, the aircraft unleashed waves of S-8 rockets and unguided air-to-ground munitions, trying to blunt the Ukrainian offensive. According to Eurasian Times, these jets often flew so low that they risked clipping trees just to stay below Ukrainian radar systems. The roar of engines mixed with the thunder of explosions, turning the calm midday sky into a storm of smoke and metal. Russia's tactic was simple. Saturate the target zone with as many rockets as possible to stop Ukrainian armor through fear and shock. Old habits from Soviet doctrine reappeared: massive barrages meant to drown precision with volume. Analysts from the war zone explained that this quantity over accuracy mindset was meant to overload Ukraine's air defense sensors and break the rhythm of their coordinated push. For several minutes, hundreds of rockets screamed through the sky, exploding across open farmland. But those low-altitude strikes came with deadly risks. The closer the Su-25s flew to the ground, the more vulnerable they became to Ukrainian surface-to-air missiles, SAMs. Operators of systems like the Buk M1 and IRIST tracked the jets on their screens, waiting for a lock. The missiles, traveling faster than the speed of sound, streaked upward with bright orange tails. A few moments later, one Russian aircraft disappeared in a ball of fire. BBC Defense Analysis reported that Ukraine had downed multiple Su-25s in similar engagements that month, forcing Russian pilots to fly even lower or abandon certain sectors altogether. Meanwhile, Ukrainian troops huddled in trenches as the ground trembled beneath them. The air was thick with dust and the smell of burning fuel. Commanders shouted over radios to keep units moving forward between barrages. They had learned to survive under this kind of fire, advance in short bursts, reposition before the next wave, and never stay still for more than a minute. Drones above relayed coordinates to artillery units, helping counter-battery teams locate and fire back. Despite the chaos, the Ukrainian line held. Their combination of electronic warfare, quick mobility, and real-time intelligence limited the damage. Western analysts later noted that Russia's MLRS strategy, while powerful, often burned through thousands of rockets for minimal territorial gain, highlighting a dangerous imbalance between destruction and effectiveness. When the last salvo ended, the smoke rolled back across the fields, revealing a scarred landscape but no major breakthrough. The counterattack had slowed Ukraine's momentum, but it hadn't stopped it. On the Ukrainian side, armor units were already regrouping for the next phase. As the echoes of artillery faded, the real battle moved back to the ground, where infantry would close in to finish what the rockets could not. By mid-afternoon on July 2024, as Russian artillery fire began to slow, Ukrainian infantry squads saw their chance. Using the cover of smoke and debris left by the MLRS barrage, small groups moved silently along the tree line, aiming to flank the enemy's right wing. Each soldier carried only what was essential: ammunition, grenades, and anti-tank weapons. The plan was simple: strike fast, destroy the vehicles guarding the trenches, and capture the position before reinforcements could arrive. In one of those teams, a Ukrainian grenadier waited for his target. Through the sight of his RPG-7V2 launcher, he saw a Russian infantry fighting vehicle 1FV advancing slowly across the field, its turret scanning for movement. When the target entered range, he took a steady breath and fired. The rocket shot forward, hit squarely on the side armor, and exploded in a flash of orange and black. Within seconds, the vehicle was engulfed in flames. None of the crew managed to escape. Defense Express later confirmed that the strike had destroyed a BMP-2 variant, a model that Russia still uses heavily on the front. The destruction of that infantry fighting vehicle opened a breach. Ukrainian troops rushed through, tossing grenades into nearby dugouts and clearing trenches one by one. Their movements were tight and disciplined, the result of months of NATO-style training in combined arms tactics. According to Forbes Defense, Ukraine's new infantry formations operate as extensions of their armored vehicles rather than separate units. ensuring that armor, drones, and soldiers fight as one coordinated system. Supporting them from behind, Bradley IFVs laid down bursts of 25mm fire to suppress Russian positions, while drones hovered above, transmitting live images to commanders. Every step was synchronized. Drones spotted, infantry engaged, and armored guns finished the job. Within minutes, Russian defenders began to fall back toward their secondary trench. By 5 p.m., Ukrainian forces had surrounded the position and forced a surrender or retreat of the remaining troops. When the smoke cleared, the Ukrainian flag was raised over the captured strongpoint. The soldiers took a moment to breathe. Their uniforms were caked in dust, their radios crackling with static, but the mission was complete. This victory was more than just ground gained. It proved how Western-supplied vehicles and well-trained infantry could overpower traditional Soviet-era formations. The Guardian wrote that such operations showed a new rhythm of warfare where precision and timing matter more than size or numbers. As evening approached, engineers moved in to secure the area, setting up defensive lines and repairing communication links. The short, violent assault had lasted less than an hour but changed control of an entire sector. Still, every soldier on the field knew that victories in this war never lasted long. Even before dusk settled, Russian gunners began recalculating their targets, preparing a counterstrike that would test every inch of the Ukrainians' new foothold. The calm after the capture lasted less than a minute. By early evening on July 2024, the distant rumble of engines gave way to something far louder. Russian 120mm mortars and self-propelled howitzers opened fire almost simultaneously, sending a barrage of shells crashing into the newly captured Ukrainian position. The ground trembled with every hit, shaking loose soil from the trench walls. Each round exploded with deadly force, scattering shrapnel across an area nearly 300 feet wide, forcing soldiers to stay low and press against the dirt for cover. For the Ukrainian units on the front line, communication became chaos. Radios hissed, drone feeds cut out, and the only clear sound was the constant thunder of artillery. Defense Express reported that Russia had deployed high-rate fire systems capable of 10 rounds per minute, designed to overwhelm defenses through sheer intensity. This relentless barrage lasted for several minutes, targeting trenches, supply trucks, and armored vehicles clustered behind the line. Then came Ukraine's response. Using the brief pauses between shelling, a drone team launched a first-person view FPV aircraft from a concealed position behind the tree line. Its camera transmitted live video to the operator, who maneuvered it low across the battlefield, flying barely 10 feet above the ground to avoid detection. The drone's target was the Russian gun responsible for the heaviest fire, a self-propelled artillery unit that had already fired dozens of shells. Guided by its onboard camera, the FPV drone approached the gun's flashing muzzle. A small flare appeared on the feed the operator's cue to strike. With a final burst of speed, the drone plunged into the ammunition compartment. A massive explosion followed, bright enough to light up the evening haze. The weapon went silent instantly. Footage shared later by Kyiv Independent showed fragments of the destroyed gun scattered across the field, confirming the strike's success. This single attack captured the essence of modern warfare: detect, strike, relocate, and strike again. Technology had replaced the old rhythm of artillery duels. Instead of waiting for radar data or coordinates from scouts, small drone teams now hunted targets in real time. A few operators with basic training could achieve what once required entire artillery battalions. The destroyed Russian battery proved that even in a war dominated by heavy guns, precision could still beat volume. And for Ukraine, it was a reminder that in this conflict, survival often depends not on who fires first but on who adapts faster. Yet the night's most daring act was still ahead. A single armored vehicle would move into enemy fire, risking everything to draw attention away from the men on the ground. By nightfall on July 2024, Ukrainian forces had secured their foothold, but the fight was far from over. Russian drones and anti-tank teams were still active along the tree line, searching for movement to target. To protect the infantry regrouping near the new trenches, one M2A2, Bradley infantry fighting vehicle, received an order few crews ever want to hear advance alone. Its mission was simple but suicidal: draw enemy fire and distract Russian operators long enough for ground units to reposition. The Bradley started moving slowly across open ground, its armor plates already marked by shrapnel. As soon as it emerged from cover, FPV drones swarmed overhead. The vehicle's gunner fired short bursts from the M242 Bushmaster, managing to shoot one drone mid-flight, a rare feat confirmed by the Drive, which documented several cases of Bradley crews destroying drones during real engagements. Despite near misses and multiple explosions nearby, the vehicle kept rolling forward, its tracks grinding over shell holes and debris. Then came the inevitable strike. A Russian anti-tank guided missile, likely a Cornet, slammed into the Bradley's engine block. The explosion blew off the rear armor panel, setting off a fire that spread quickly through the hull. Smoke filled the cabin. The hydraulic ramp at the back jammed, trapping the crew inside. Amid the chaos, the commander gave the order to abandon the vehicle. They smashed through the emergency hatch, jumping into the dirt as artillery shells whistled overhead. Seconds later, another blast consumed what was left of the engine compartment. Forbes Defense noted that this was one of several incidents where Ukrainian crews used their vehicles as bait to misdirect FPV drone swarms, a tactic born out of necessity to protect infantry and artillery observers nearby. The Bradley's armor did its job; it absorbed the hit, saving its crew, though the vehicle itself was beyond repair. Not long after, Russian reconnaissance drones arrived over the smoking wreck. They filmed the twisted frame glowing red in the darkness and uploaded the footage to pro-war Telegram channels. The images spread quickly, labeled as proof of Russian victory. Within hours, state media repeated the same narrative. Another American weapon destroyed, another symbol of Western failure. Yet in Kyiv, the same scene carried a different meaning. Ukrainian military pages shared the video with their own caption, "It did not retreat." To them, it was not a defeat, but an act of courage that saved dozens of lives. Analysts from BBC Monitoring called this moment a textbook example of modern propaganda warfare, where a single battlefield incident could serve two completely opposite stories at once. Both sides claimed victory, and both were partly right. The Russians captured an image, but the Ukrainians kept the ground. When the sun rose the next morning, the Bradley remained where it fell, its turret frozen mid-turn, its armor blackened by fire. For those who passed it later, it stood as a silent monument to sacrifice and adaptation. In a war defined by technology and information, even wreckage becomes a weapon of meaning. The burned hull was no longer just metal. It was evidence of two different wars, the one fought with guns and the other fought with stories. The battle around that single Bradley IFV summed up what this war has become in July 2024, a contest of precision, endurance, and will. On one side stood Ukraine, armed with Western technology and modern tactics. On the other, Russia relied on mass firepower and old doctrines now cracking under pressure. The footage from that day showed the future of warfare unfolding in real-time: drones replacing scouts, armored vehicles acting as decoys, and soldiers adapting faster than command posts could react. As BBC Defense Analysis observed, every destroyed Russian gun or drone marks not just a loss in hardware, but a blow to Moscow's shrinking advantage. Ukraine's resilience turned a doomed mission into a victory of strategy and spirit. This story isn't just about machines, it's about courage redefining modern battlefields. Subscribe to Military Force for more true frontline reports and expert analysis.